Page's school report. Page's school report. Focus question. What does Paige learn by doing her class assignment? Chapter 1. Okay, class, we're starting a new history project today. Mr. Lee announced from the front of the room. Some kids groaned, but Paige grinned. History was her favorite subject. As you know, you've been studying the different indigenous nations that lived here before Europeans arrived, Mr. Lee said. Today, each of you will pick one nation or tribe to learn more about. In 1 week, you'll present what you've learned to the class. I have a list here, Mr. Lee continued. I'll call you up in alphabetical order to make your choice. Now it was Paige's turn to groan. Jack, her best friend, giggled. His last name was a boat, so he would get the first pick. Paige's last name was Whale. She would be called up that list. Paige tapped her fingers on her desk impatiently as Mr. Lee called up her classmates one by one. She really hoped no one would pick the Osage Nation. That's the one she wanted. Paige loved ballet, and Maria Talchev, a famous ballerina Paige really admired, was a member of the Osage Nation. Finally, Mr. Lee called Paige up to his desk. She read the list and sighed when she saw someone who had already picked the Osage. In fact, there were only a couple nations left to choose from. Paige looked down the list. The Makah, she read. I've never heard of them. The Makah is a great choice, Mr. Lee said. They're a small tribe in the Pacific Northwest. I'm sure you'd enjoy learning about them. Okay, Paige said, but she still couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. Chapter 2. That night, Paige texted Jack about the project. You're so lucky your last name starts with A. I know, he texted back. I picked the Cherokee. They're the biggest indigenous nation in the country. Finding info will be a piece of cake. Paige sighed. The Makah was a really small tribe. What if I can't find anything about them? That's what you get from having a last name that starts with W, Jack teased. Don't worry, he added. You'll find info and you'll get a good grade, like always. Not as good as me, but still. Oh yeah? Paige replied. I bet I get a better grade than you, even though I'll have to work way harder to find info. She wasn't actually sure that was true, but she couldn't let Jack brag without putting up a fight. You think so? Jack texted. Then let's make a bet. Whoever gets the better grade wins. Loser buys the winner an ice cream sundae. Sounds good. Sounds great, Paige countered. I can already taste it. Chapter 3. Paige was worried she would have a hard time finding information about the Makah, so she began researching the very next day. She asked her mother to take her to the huge downtown public library after school. For a moment, Paige in shock. The main floor of the library looked as big as a city block. People were scattering at tables and computers, and there were stacks and stacks of books stretching off into the shadows. A huge staircase led up to other floors. Paige remembered Mr. Lee's advice about researching in a library. Always look for the reference desk. The librarian can answer most of your questions. Sure enough, the librarian was able to help her. Paige soon had 5 books on the Makah with her arms full. He headed to a desk with a quiet corner and settled down. After just an hour of reading, Paige had already learned a lot about the Makah. Mr. Lee was right. While the Makah was a small tribe, they had such an interesting history and culture. She was so fascinated by everything she was reading, she hardly noticed that how much time had passed until she got a text from her mom saying it was time to go home. Paige gathered her books and headed downstairs to check them out. Did you learn anything interesting? The librarian asked as he helped Paige check out the books. A ton, Paige said. She told him all about totem poles. Poles up to 40 feet tall curved from tree trunks. They curved them for a lot of different reasons, she said. Like, some were memorial poles. They described a person's life, while some told the history of a clown. Wow, that's fascinating, she said with a smile. And people still carve totem poles today? Today? Paige repeated. I'm not sure. The books only talked about their history. said the librarian. Maybe you could take a look at the tribe's website to learn more about the Mecca today. The tribe has a website? Paige asked. Most tribes and nations do. Here, I'll show you, he said. He turned on computer screen toward Paige and searched for the Mecca. He pulled up the official tribe website. A tribal website. Take a look. They have a whole page for news and current events. Wow, Paige said. This is really helpful. Thank you. You're welcome, he said as he handed the books back to Paige. Good luck with your project. Chapter 4. On the morning of presentation day, Paige sat down beside Jug in Mr. Lee's classroom. I hope you're ready to buy me the sundae, she teased, because I'm definitely going to win this bet. We'll see about that, Jack reported. While Jack's last name got him the first pick of nations, it also meant he had to present first. Paige had to admit, Jack's presentation was pretty good. He'd made a diorama of a Cherokee winter house called an Assi. She talked about how the Cherokee were skilled agriculturists and traders. They lived in permanent cities along rivers where they grew crops. Jack had also drawn a map of their ancestral land in the southeast. After gold was discovered there in the 1800s, though, the U.S. government had forced them to relocate to west of the Mississippi River. He ended his presentation by talking about the green corn ceremony, one of the most important ceremonies along the Cherokee, held in the last summer when the corn they planted had ripened. Besides being a celebration of the harvest, it was also a time to forgive, rekindle friendships, and celebrate new beginnings. Well done, Jack, Mr. Lee said as everyone clapped. Very informative. Jack smiled at Paige. Beat that, he whispered. I planned too, Paige said, returning the smile. But she would have to wait until practically the end of the play. Just as she was the last one to choose a topic, she was also the last to present. Chapter 5. One by one, Paige listened to her classmates give their presentations. Deirdre did her presentation on the Hopi, whose ancestors built cities in the alcoves of cliffs in the southwest. Reynaldo's presentation was on the Inuit in Alaska, who invented special glasses to protect them against snow blindness and kayaks for traveling and hunting. It was fun to learn about all the different nations and how unique each one was. Finally, it was Paige's turn. She carried the 3D model she'd made of a Mecca canoe with her to the front of the class. For my presentation, I researched the Mecca, a small tribe who lives on a peninsula in the Pacific Northwest. The land is covered with thick forest and surrounded on three sides of the ocean. In the past, groups of families lived together in structures called the longhouses made of cedar wood. The Mecca once lived in permanent villages along the coast of the Pacific Ocean, but in the summer they set up temporary camps along streams and rivers where they fished for salmon. They were also expert whale hunters. Whale hunting was very difficult and dangerous. It took a lot of skill and courage, but just one whale could provide enough food, oil, and materials to supply a village for an entire year. The Mecca carried giant canoes from the trunks of huge cedar trees. The canoes could be as big as 30 feet long, large enough to handle the waves of the ocean. Paige held up the miniature canoe to show the class. Mecca hunters used only paddles and small sails when they headed far out of sight of land in search of whales. Looking around the room, Paige could tell her classmates were hanging on every word. Canoes are still really important to the Mecca way of life today, Paige continued. Every year, some Mecca travels hundreds of miles along the coast of Washington and British Columbia by canoe, stopping to visit the different tribes along the way. At each stop, the paddlers come ashore, and there's a celebration with dancing, songs, and dinner. Wow, Mr. Lee said as Paige sat back down. Very well done, everyone, and thank you, Paige, for including information about the Mecca today. It's important to remember that these nations exist today and continue to practice as well as adopt their traditional way of life. Paige leaned over to Jack and whispered, "Now, who do you think will win our bet?" Jack grinned. "I have a feeling we'll be splitting that Sunday 50-50. Masterful mariners. The Maka have been skilled mariners or sailors since before recorded history. Early Maka traveled, fished, and hunted by canoe. The smaller canoes were curved for children to practice in. They learned how to read the weather to predict sailing conditions in different places. On clear days, natural landmarks were used for navigation. On foggy days, Maka mariners used the ocean currents and the sound of waves crashing against the shore to help them navigate. Their navigation skills and knowledge of weather patterns allow them to safely travel as far as 100 miles from the shore to hunt and fish. Today, hunting and fishing are still very important to Maka culture. Many Maka households rely on fishing for both their diet and income.